We know that the humanitarian debate today is not only limited to governmental organization or non-governmental NGOs organization or to the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement at all. It englobes everybody, everywhere. Because it's as easy as that. There are humanitarian demands, challenges, requirements everywhere and daily in the world. So, as a humanitarian movement, the institutions forming this movement, yes, they seek for achieving humanitarian activities based on humanitarian law and other rules. And for this movement, I think to the law itself, and maybe before the law itself, there is a series of principles guiding their activities which must be present permanently. So its activities, and especially that they were formulated, I will enumerate the 7 principles, but let's be clear, they were elaborated and formulated in a final form after 1 century of field work. I have to think about that in mind. As you may know, the Red Cross Red Crescent movement is a field-oriented movement. So there is a need for standards and the criteria for their activities, for their conduct, their behavior on the field, and policies in time of war and in peacetime also. Let's, before giving you the principles themselves, what we mean when we say Red Cross Red Crescent movement. Some of you, I'm sure they know very well about what we are talking. Others may be confused sometimes. Red Cross here, Red Crescent there, international, national. So let's begin with the founder of this movement, the mother institution, which is the International Committee of the Red Cross, represented here by some colleagues and myself. The ICRC, the National Committee of the Red Cross, was born in Switzerland in 1863. Next year, it will celebrate 150 years of life. 150 years, all this is a long period. Maybe for the human beings, but for institutions, I don't say nothing, but it's, for the history of humanity, it's very short. But in the life of an institution is well enough for giving it the possibility to build and to reinforce itself. So, not for the sake of its own image, but for developing, ameliorating, strengthening its work. ICRC is an impartial, neutral, and independent organization whose exclusively humanitarian missions is to protect the life and dignity of victims of armed conflicts, of war, and other situations of violence, and to assist and help them. Works to preventing suffering by promoting and strengthening humanitarian law and universal humanitarian principles, as will be explained later. Established in 1863, as I said before, the ICRC is at the origin of the modern humanitarian law instruments, I mean Geneva Conventions of 49, before them and after them other instruments, after them other instruments, and also at the origin of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement. The ICRC directs and coordinates the international activities of the movement in armed conflicts and other situations of armed violence. The second component of the movement is the International Federation. There is the ICRC, International Committee of the Red Cross, working mainly, not exclusively, in periods, in times of war, but there is also the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent societies, because there is no membership in the ICRC. The ICRC is one single institution based in Switzerland, Geneva, with delegations everywhere in the world. But the Federation is the representative of the national societies of Red Cross and Red Crescent, one society per country, regardless of the constitutional structure of the country, federal or not, big or small, does not matter. So it was founded the Federation after the First World War in 1919. And as such, works to inspire, promote, and facilitate the humanitarian activities undertaken by its member national societies to improve the situation of the most vulnerable people. It was created in 1919, and it directs, coordinates the movement activities to victims of natural disasters and technological or other calamities, disaster. It helps refugees, and in case of health emergencies also coordinate the activities of the movement. As you see, there is difference between the mandate of the ICRC, armed conflicts, and the Federation, natural disaster and other catastrophes. The Federation is the official representative of the member national societies in the international field. It promotes cooperation between them and works to strengthen their capacity to carry out effective disaster preparedness, health, and social programs. And finally, the third component is the national societies, and they are interior to the Federation itself. The Federation was founded in 1919. The national societies, they were born immediately after the ICRC. 1863 the ICRC, 1864 the first national societies in Europe at the first step, later in other countries. Since 1864, there are national societies of Red Cross or Red Crescent. The Red Crescent appellation, maybe it's very important for your context. The Red Crescent appellation goes back to 1876, after an Ottoman Turkish initiative. And the work of they work, all of them, the work of the principles of the international movement in more than 160 countries. We can feel that about, of course, the national societies, they represent all the countries of the world, and they base their work on these fundamental principles in wartime and in peacetime both. These three components here, I can segment, and maybe the most important point of my very short presentation. The three components of the movement are bound by 7 fundamental principles. They are not 6, 5, or 3 principles, but 7 fundamental principles, which are humanity, impartiality, neutrality, voluntary service, unity, and universality. So humanity, impartiality, neutrality, independence, voluntary service, unity, universality. These principles as such, they were formulated after in Vienna Conference of the movement in 1965, so a little bit more than 1 century of existence of the movement on the basis of what? Of the field work and experience research. There were articles, literature, books, which is only how to orient and develop the mentioned components of the movement. I think these 7 principles, of course we can comment on each of them, but let's say that they have one major purpose, which is the help without discrimination to those who suffer over the world. Without discrimination. Universality, unity, voluntary service, all of this, they really, their aim is to focus on that necessity of protecting situations of violence, human or technological disasters, natural disasters, without any discrimination. And maybe, of course, we can focus on some of them, but from my point of view, humbly speaking, we have to put humanity, independence, and neutrality above all. Because if we have to put our work on clear principles, our first concern is humanity, how to save humanity in all these very hard and difficult situations. Of course, we can talk for hours, days, even weeks, and longer on the Islamic conception of charitable action, and we can also make some comparisons between the Islamic related values and these 7 principles or derivative principles from them, but I think it would be more or less for our discussion, our general discussion. I think that I have to stop here. So just it was kind of refreshment to begin our dialogue of this afternoon. Thank you very much.